All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to talk to you today. It is Thursday. Hope you'll call. I think it's been a pretty good week, actually. I've enjoyed the programs we've been doing. And the guest I mentioned yesterday who had said they wouldn't come back on the program has, after I've agreed to some concessions, maybe. Well, I mean, I've agreed to the concessions because I want to have the guest on. So that was good. I'm glad, because I was concerned about losing somebody valuable that I care about. Really, it's more losing someone I care about than losing them from the program. But if they're watching, I appreciate you very, very much, and certainly will take the steps that you requested to make sure you feel more comfortable doing the program going forward. The question for today, the progressive left is weak. We acknowledge that. They acknowledge that, I think, pretty much, although sometimes they kind of backslide on that admittance. But is it wordless? Is it not helping? And that's really something I want to explore a little bit today. I hope you'll join me, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. And really going to focus on progressive media as embodied by Democracy Now!, Amy Goodman, Juan Gonzalez. We're not going to talk, we don't have a clip of Gonzalez, but the two of them did interview Jill Stein and Dr. Butch Ware, both of them doctors, by the way. Stein, a medical doctor, Ware, a professor, PhD at Cal Santa Barbara. So we'll play some clips from that where I felt that Amy Goodman didn't really handle that interview the way I would have preferred, but still she did it, and that's a good thing. We're also going to look at one of my more favorite progressive environmental organizations, Climate Defiance. I feature them on Halitics, so we'll discuss both of those and keep asking that question. Are they making things better, or maybe they're not? Also, I want to talk about, and following up on the conversation about Climate Defiance, to discuss ways to mitigate, address, and, end ecocide. Is that possible? And is the Biden administration doing what should be done, can be done, needs to be done, at least to start the process of healing our planet? So that's really where we're going today. And again, at any point, please, I want to hear from you. 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. We start today, as we do, tragically have to, pretty much every day for the past now just about a year. The Israeli genocide in Gaza, the occupation of Palestine, the ongoing butchery by Israel. So I mentioned earlier this week, the Washington Post suggesting maybe Israel's tamping down. It's kind of taking its jackboot off the throat of Gaza just a little bit, because it's renewing its focus on northern Israel, Lebanon, and Hezbollah. Doesn't look like it. 39 more dead in the past 24 hours, starting midnight, I guess, between Tuesday and Wednesday, and then midnight Wednesday and Thursday in Gaza. We've got 15 more dead just today, the 26th. And there you can see a man mourning today, that image there from Anadolu Ajansi, the Turkish news service. And just to provide a bigger picture, just to give you that, because again, you need to see this is what is our government is doing. This is what our government is supporting, an endless slaughter, and they know it. They know exactly what Israel is doing. They know that Israel is bound and determined to eradicate Gaza, to eliminate pretty much all of Palestine. And we saw there was a map, right? Bibi showed a map without Palestine on it, and he kind of chuckled, oh, well, we have lots of things we don't have on that map. When asked about it, well, they don't want Palestine to exist, and they don't want Palestinians to exist, and they're doing everything they can to wipe them off the map and wipe the human beings off the planet. It is the worst thing, honestly, in my lifetime. It's about as bad as anything I've ever seen. Now, that's, by the way, that's centering, I guess, the West, centering colonialism, because perhaps I'm not, the Hutus and the Tutsis was worse. There were 800,000 Tutsis killed by the Hutus in that genocide in Rwanda. So maybe I shouldn't, choose this as the worst, but we are fully backing it. And this is a Western ally that is doing the killing. So it's hard for me to think anything could be worse. And there's your latest numbers. No, that's 41. Yeah, no, they're over 40. It should be, I'm sorry. You know what? I got that wrong. I'm going to correct that in real time. 41. Let's see if you can see that. You see that? Yeah, I just corrected that. That's the new number. Over 41,530. That's how many Israel's killed in Gaza. That's just Gaza. Now, remember, the front of the Israeli defense, the Israeli military's main focus now is not so much killing Gazans, although that's certainly part of it, but it's also killing Lebanese, killing people in Lebanon. And so here's the latest video. I think this is from NBC, if I got it right. Let's make sure we get this correct for you before we start it up. But I think it's NBC News. So let's Mideast crisis here from NBC News. It is so awful what is happening now in Lebanon. You want to. It keeps going back to that. How can we support? How can we now? As a nation, as a government, to support Israel in this situation is so wrong. It's so morally misguided. It's so amoral. But we are voters. How as voters can we justify voting for Biden, voting for Harris to continue? She's made it clear beyond any doubt, beyond any peradventure, that she's wholly in support of Israel. Let's play the clip.
The Israeli military says it is preparing for a possible ground invasion of Lebanon, calling up 2 reserve brigades to the northern border. Hundreds of thousands of Lebanese have been displaced by the bombing, according to the International Rescue Committee. More than 600 have been killed. Meanwhile, the U.S. and several allies are proposing an immediate ceasefire and negotiations. For the latest, let's go to Danielle Hamamdjian. Good morning, Danielle. What do we know about this ceasefire proposal?
Good morning, Francis. That's right. This joint statement is being led by the United States and France, and it's calling for an immediate 21-day ceasefire across the Lebanon-Israel border to allow for negotiations. The statement itself was negotiated on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York, where world leaders are meeting this week. It's being backed by a number of countries, including the UK, Australia, Canada, the EU, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, to name a few. The expectation, according to U.S. officials, is that Israel would welcome the proposal. Benjamin Netanyahu...
Right. So there's no reason to think Israel would welcome this proposal. Israel has rejected every ceasefire opportunity that the United States has dangled in front of it. And it is the direct result of Harris-Biden policy, which is giving Israel everything it wants, every weapon it wants, protecting Netanyahu from any international recriminations, any challenge to Israeli hegemony in the region. The U.S. is there to protect Israel. That's why Israel is totally empowered to continue the genocide against Palestine, and now to open up a second front, third front, if you want to include, right, West Bank, Gaza, and now northern Israel, Lebanon, against Hezbollah. So this is a complete nightmare. The Middle East is exploding, and it's a direct result. It's the failure of Harris-Biden. I don't know how you can vote for her. I keep saying, Trump's awful. Yes, he sucks. But it's not one or the other. It's neither.
Tel Aviv for New York early this morning, and he's made it clear in the past 2 weeks the return of tens of thousands of Israeli civilians to their communities along the Lebanese border is now a war goal. So a deal would need to guarantee their return. On the other side of the border, thousands of Lebanese civilians have also been displaced, and the death toll there, as you just mentioned, more than 600. As for Hezbollah, it would not be a signatory to the ceasefire. The Lebanese government would be coordinating its approval with the group. And to be clear, the deal would only apply to Israel and Lebanon, but American officials say they would use the pause to restart negotiations for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza.
All right, I'll stop it there. So what you heard her say is really important. Hezbollah, Israel's rejected. There ain't going to be no deal. But even if there were, it wouldn't stop Israel because Hezbollah is not part of it. So Israel can just say, hey, we said we weren't going to go after Lebanon, but we never said we're not going to go after Hezbollah. So we're just going after Hezbollah. And yeah, there's a lot of collateral damage and a lot of human beings are being killed. But, that's the problem that you get when you let these terrorists in your country. That would be the response. So there's no light here. The so-called ceasefire that the United States, UK, the others are negotiating isn't going to get us anywhere. First of all. And second of all, Israel's rejecting it anyway. And you can see this is from Al Jazeera. The Israeli Prime Minister's office has released a statement where on Netanyahu's X page saying news about a ceasefire is not true. They're going to continue to attack Lebanon. 72 more people killed in Lebanon today by Israel. So that's the fruit, the poisonous fruit, the toxic fruit of the American support, the Harris-Biden unwavering commitment to support Israel, regardless of what Israel does. And even when Israel flouts international law, Harris, Biden are there to protect Israel, to protect and to lie for Israel. So this is a really instructive story. Now, I told you that this program today is the question I'm asking: can we view progressive institutions as helping, as making things better? And this video from Democracy Now!, because that's my sort of progressive institution stand-in, I think shows you that they tell us really, really important stuff. So let me play this.
ProPublica has revealed USAID and the State Department's Refugees Bureau both concluded this spring that Israel had deliberately blocked deliveries of food and medicine into Gaza.
All right, so think about that for a sec. We talk about whether it's a genocide. Israel's consistently saying this is not a genocide. We're not committing genocide. We're not intending to kill civilians. We're not deliberately targeting civilians. And then ProPublica, and I said this was Democracy Now!, but I give Democracy Now! Credit for reporting this story. ProPublica says, hey, wait a sec. Anthony Blinken knew, the State Department knew this spring that Israel was deliberately, illegally preventing any aid from getting, or almost any aid from getting into Gaza. They were using starvation as a weapon. That is genocide.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and other top Biden officials rejected the findings of the agencies, even though they're considered the two foremost U.S. authorities on humanitarian.
So U.S. authorities told Antony Blinken and Joe Biden, and presumably Kamala Harris, that Israel is preventing essential aid, food, water, medical supplies, energy. Israel is preventing that from getting to the people who are dying. That's genocide. Anthony Blinken knew it. Biden knew it. And what do? They kept supplying Israel. And not only that, they lied to you.
Assistance. Blinken's decision allowed the U.S. to keep sending arms to Israel. Under U.S. law, the government is required to cut off weapons shipments to countries, preventing the delivery of U.S.-backed aid. Days after receiving the reports, Blinken told Congress, quote, "We do not currently assess that the Israeli government is prohibiting or otherwise restricting the transport or delivery of U.S. humanitarian assistance."
But I'm going to stop it there. You can see on the screen, right? He's lying to Congress, flat out. Now, what if this had happened during the Trump administration? There would be calls for impeachment. There would be demands for a full investigation, which there should be, of course. But as far as I know, there's no response. I haven't heard anyone in Congress. Is AOC now saying, yeah, you know what, I can't support Harris anymore. She's part of this administration. Is Harris going to condemn it? Is Harris going to say, you know what, if you elect me president, she could say plausibly, hey, maybe she didn't know. I wasn't part of the discussions. They kept me out of this. So you know what? I'm going to prosecute them for violating international law if I'm elected. I'm going to refer this to the International Court. Now, I don't know. We're not signatories to all the Hague Convention, so maybe Biden, Blinken wouldn't be subject to their authority, the authority of the courts, international court system. But if I were Harris, you could say that, right? She could say, you know what? I'm going to explore every possible avenue to hold these people accountable, both Israel and Americans who continue to support the genocide. She's not going to do that. Are you kidding me? So I don't know how you can support her. And I do give Democracy Now! Credit for covering this story because it's a critically important story. It's essential. By the way, 240-242-5646. Would love to talk to you. 240-242-5646. I'm going to play from the interview on Democracy. Just show you that story that just came out today, right? That was just in today's Democracy Now! I'm not sure when ProPublica reported it. It may have been in the past few days. But I do want to play now clips from the interview that Amy Goodman and Juan Gonzalez did with these two doctors here, Stein and Ware, because I think it shows you the limitations. It shows you the fecklessness, the weakness of the progressive left.
This is Dr. Stein's third run for the presidency.
Right. So I will be real honest with you. I totally cherry-picked, right? There's a lot of good stuff in this interview. Jill Stein gets to make her case. I think sometimes she's got diarrhea of the mouth. She just keeps talking. She has like 5 different things to say, kind of like me. She's got a lot of things she wants to say, and she tries to get them all out at once. And I understand exactly why she does that, because she so infrequently does get that opportunity to speak before a large audience. Because media just won't entertain her. They silence her. They mute her. So I understand why she gets that, to that point where she just has to get everything out. But it doesn't always serve her well. And I'm not going to play all of it. And I, again, cherry-picked some of the areas where I really felt that Amy Goodman did a disservice to Jill Stein. So let me continue this. Here we go.
View her as a spoiler candidate.
Right. So there you go. So spoiler candidate, right? That's where many in the Democratic Party call her a spoiler.
2016 election when Hillary Clinton narrowly lost to Donald
Ran
Trump.
3 times. Hillary Clinton, right? Because that's one of the attacks. Oh, this is her 3rd time. Why is she such a running every 4 years? Like that's what AOC said. Doesn't she have anything else to do? That kind of crap. So here Goodman is repeating the Democratic Party talking points to minimize Jill Stein, to reduce her. And I don't like it. I just don't like it.
In that election, Clinton lost to Trump in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin by fewer votes than Stein had received. In this campaign cycle, Democrats have fought to keep the Green Party off the ballot, while some supporters of Trump have helped Green Party with obtaining ballot access.
All right, so again, there you go. She took votes away from Hillary. We got Trump because of Stein. This is, again, a aggressive Democratic Party talking point. And you could easily frame that differently, which was there's many, many disaffected people on the left, and they are not voting Democratic, and they find a home in Jill Stein. You could easily frame it that way, but she chose not to. She said, so Hillary didn't get as many votes as she needed in those states, and they went to Jill Stein. That's how it's framed. I think that's misleading. I think that's a Democratic talking point that the so-called progressive left media is presenting it. I don't like it. It's not inaccurate. It's not untrue, but it's doesn't accurately reflect the situation, in my opinion. I know many of you disagree. And then here again. So Goodman points out that the Democrats are trying to keep Stein off the ballot, which I think is wrong-headed, misguided, anti-democratic with a small d. And then she immediately follows up, but Republicans are trying to help her. So this is, again, presenting Stein as a spoiler, as someone who's keeping us from having good things like Kamala Harris for president, as opposed to pointing out, which we have seen often on Democracy Now!, how terrible the Harris-Biden policies have been, how much harm they are doing, like that, aiding and abetting what they knew was a genocide and then lying about it to the American people.
Former Trump lawyer Jay Sekulow recently represented the Green Party in its efforts to be placed on the Nevada ballot at the U.S. Supreme Court. Stein, though, like Ralph Nader before her, has described her campaign as one...
And then again, she invokes the specter of Ralph Nader, does Amy Goodman. And, I don't like Ralph Nader. I don't think Ralph Nader was a good candidate. I don't think he was any more to the left on many issues than Al Gore. And I think he is the reason we do. He is the reason we have George W. Bush. Jill Stein is not the reason we have Donald Trump as president. But if she were, you'd still have to say, well, is it clear that Trump was the greater of the evils between him and Hillary? I will not, you know me, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to say that. Hillary was a terrible, terrible option. Al Gore was not a bad option. And Dr. Stein was a good option. Ralph Nader was not. So they're not analogous. But Amy Goodman makes them analogous. Also, quite a long intro question as well. I thought we were there to hear Dr. Stein, which explains, by the way, the failure of Amy Goodman to ask a simple question and allow Stein to answer it does explain why Stein has that diarrhea of the mouth I mentioned earlier.
Party duopoly in the United States. Jill Stein joins us from Boston, and Butch Ware joins us from Santa Barbara, where he teaches at UC Santa Barbara about the history of Africa and Islam. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Let's start, Jill Stein, by you telling us why you're running for president. What does you see is most important right now?
All right, so I'm going to, that's the end of that video. So let me just move on. We'll get to the rest. We'll get to the other clips in a moment. But I do want to say that was a good question. Goodman ended with a good question. Why are you running? Open-ended, allows her to present her case, and she does. And I'm not going to go through it because we don't really need to hear that case. I do want to go to the next clip here, though, where again, in my opinion, Amy Goodman mischaracterizes Jill Stein as a spoiler, as somebody who's not acting in the best interests of the American people and not necessarily consistent. And the question is fair, but again, the way it's presented, I don't like it. Now, this is a really good example of how the left can be very shrewd, very clever in the way it presents people without actually in any way lying or misrepresenting anything, but just characterizing them in a certain way and not giving them, not presenting the full picture, the full portrait. So here we go.
Opinion around the world.
Before you selected Butch Ware as your running mate, several high-profile Palestinian and Arab rights activists said they were approached by your team, including Abed Ayoub, the director of the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee, and Palestinian-American lawyer and Professor Noura Erakat. Professor Erakat tweeted, I offered to join Ticket if they would be willing to concede the election if Dems deliver on permanent ceasefire and arms embargo. The idea being use Stein's margin in 3 swing states to compel those concessions. If we truly believe the Dems would never concede, then there's nothing to lose. It also makes clear to those eager to throw Palestinians, Arab Americans, and American Muslims under the bus that if they lose to Trump, they are the source of their own loss. The Green Green Party rejected this as they're accountable to their broader base and the health of their party. I understand that, but my priority in this moment is doing everything we can to end genocide by using all the leverage we have.
All right, I'm going to stop it there. So this is something that's been dogging Jill Stein, this argument. Hey, you say you're so against genocide, but we had an opportunity to go to the Democrats and say, hey, if you promise to, if you support an arms embargo, or if you implement an arms embargo, we won't run. Well, Stein answers that question, but it's a very, very tough question, because if you're like me, you're like saying, well, we have to stop the war, that the killing is the genocide, like Betty Ayub. You're like, well, that sort of makes sense, right? Because this is such an important issue. But political parties aren't limited to one issue. In fact, they can't be. They have to govern on a whole range of issues. And the Democratic Party is terrible on issue after issue. Even if you somehow got a concession on ending the genocide for now, an arms embargo now, what about Ukraine? What about ecocide? What about healthcare? There's so many other issues. And Stein can address that. But again, the way the question is framed really is designed to put Stein on the spot. And she responds, but it's presenting her in a light that really isn't fair, doesn't do justice to this remarkable campaign that she's running. And so I don't like that question.
Professor Noura Erakat said. Your response to that, Dr. Stein?
Well, and let me stop it one more time, because also it puts the onus on Stein. It's like it's your fault if we don't stop the genocide, because you might have had this last clear chance to stop it. But they don't have any chance to stop it. The burden is on the people with power. The Democrats, the Republicans in Congress, they're the ones, obviously Harris Biden, they're the ones who can stop Bibi. And they're not doing it. But we'll listen, because Stein does give a good answer, but she's distracted. Her core message is obviously being somewhat muted and blunted by Amy Goodman's question. And I assume she's doing this because donors to this Democracy Now! Don't like the Green Party. They consider themselves progressive left. Remember, donors to all groups tend to be to the right of the rank and file in those groups. So people who watch Democracy Now! Are to the left of those who actually contribute to Democracy Now! And that's going to be the same when we talk about environmental groups.
Yes. Let me say that ending the genocide in Gaza is not a quick fix.
All right, I at first didn't love that answer from Stein. I was like, she was in a really tough position with that question, right? It is a hard one, because if, like me and like Jill Stein, you say this is a moral imperative, we must stop the genocide, and then you're said, well, you could maybe stop it if you promise not to run. And that's, totally hypothetical. And she explains why it wouldn't probably work, but it's still a tough one. So I didn't love that response. The first thing was, it's not an easy fix. But she explains, and she's right in the end. My answer is, it's easy to say we're not going to give any more aid to Israel. Period. End of story. And I think that would stop the killing. But would it end the occupation? Would it ultimately mean Israel would stop oppressing Palestine? Maybe they'd stop killing them overtly, deliberately. But would they stop oppressing, stop persecuting? and for how long? So Stein answers all of that, but it's a distraction from her core message.
Frederick Douglass, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. The Green Party is here to continue to exert that pressure. Simply extracting a promise before an election is a very precarious thing to do. The Democrats might agree for a period of a week, and then they might find, oh, circumstances made us go back to continuing.
By the way, I don't think they would agree. I'm quite confident they would ignore that request. But it makes the Green Party look weaker. Oh, we were hoping, it betrays their voters. Because people who say, well, wait a sec, I'm not voting just based on Israel. I'm voting because of health care. I'm voting because of housing. I'm voting because of the pernicious impact of money in politics. And you're going to just throw all those issues away because the Democrat Party promises or even invokes an embargo for a week or a month. Yeah, it doesn't, when you think about it, it isn't a great option for the Green Party. But it's presented in a way that is, designed to impeach her, to make it look like she doesn't really care that much about genocide.
You really do not want to unilaterally disarm in this kind of situation. It would be extremely ineffective. More power to Nora Ericott for being the powerhouse voice that she is.
I'm going to stop it there because obviously she's showing a little bit of graciousness or politeness or what have you to Nora Ericott. I think that was a very unfortunate decision by Nora Ericott to make that public. I don't think she needed to do that. I don't know what the purpose of doing that was, except to embarrass the Green Party. There was no reason to do it. She shouldn't have done it. 240-242-5646. When you negotiate, I was, trial lawyer. When I negotiated settlements, and that was my weakest, by the way. One reason I stopped being a trial lawyer is I wasn't a good negotiator. I hated negotiating. I wasn't good at it. I was good at oral argument. I was good before a judge. I was good before a jury. I think I'm a good writer, to pat myself on the back. So I'm not, but I just wasn't good at negotiating. I never was, and I hated it. So one thing, though, when you negotiate, that's totally privileged. Negotiating strategy is never allowed to be shared with a court or with a jury. Now, under certain remote circumstances, judges are sort of omniscient, so you could tell the judge maybe. But even then, the judges really try to not know how the parties are, not the details. Yes. Are you close to a settlement? Yes. How much did you offer? Sometimes, right, if the judge is conducting it. But anything that's done in negotiations is totally kept away from the fact finder. They're not supposed to know. And that's usually the jury, because it colors their opinion. Well, wait, the plaintiff offered to settle for $1,000, so they must not think they have a very good case. Or the defendant offered $1 million. They must think they have a weak case. So that's never allowed to be shared. Seems to me that if Nora Ericott and the Green Party are discussing whether she is going to be the Veep, no, you don't. That's kind of internal stuff. It's not really relevant. So I have a problem with that personally, and I think everything should be public. But you're talking about a small party with a small base that is trying desperately to make a positive difference, and you're undercutting them. I don't like that. Just don't like it. All right, let's hear a little more from the way Amy Goodman undercuts the Green Party too.
At all.
I'm just hurrying because we don't have that much time, but New York Democratic Congressmember Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
So now she invokes AOC, and it's like, where are you going with this, Amy Goodman? There's so many tragic problems in this world that are exacerbated by American empire. You could delve into those with Dr. Stein. You could talk to her about ways to reach the American public. You could, be sympathetic because every single show you do discusses the fruits, the toxic, poisonous fruits of American military hegemony, the ways that the duopoly has betrayed American workers. You could talk about any of that. And instead, you're going to some ridiculous Instagram that AOC did.
A recent Instagram Live about voting for the Green ticket in November. This is what she said.
What I have a problem with is
and it's so unprofessional, right? I mean, I played this on my show, but I played it to show how AOC is a joke, how she's not a serious person. And instead, it's being used, this Instagram, to impeach Dr. Stein. This is not what our progressive media institution should be doing.
If you are running for president, you are the de facto leader of your party. And first of all, trust me on this. I run as a third-party candidate.
Right. I don't trust you at all. I'm not going to play more of it. But I just wanted to share this because even when you watch a program like Democracy Now!, it's important to realize that it's not always going to be presenting facts, arguments, logic in a way that is consistent with a truly progressive message, that it may well be, as in this case, on several questions, carrying water for the Democrats, making arguments for the Democrats, accepting the argument that somehow we need Kamala Harris to stop Donald Trump. And that's not the right message. It's not the message we need in this time. When the Democratic Party, no less than the Republican Party, when the Democratic leadership, no less than the Republican leadership, is causing the problems we face. So that's very disappointing, but unsurprising by Democracy Now! All right, let me go to another group that I wonder, are they making things better? Are they making things worse? I mean, you could argue, well, in a way, Democracy Now! Is making things worse because they provide a platform, but they use that platform to undercut our one legitimate hope for something better going forward. So I question that. Now, I might come down, yeah, I'm glad we have Democracy Now! And they provide a lot of really important information, and they share that gruesome story, the evil, the inherent evil, the cancer in the Biden-Harris administration that causes it to deny the truth about what Israel is doing, to deny aid to people who are being eliminated. So I'm glad they are there to share it, but I think we can't ignore that in many ways our progressive institutions don't promote a real progressive alternative. So here's Climate Defiance. Climate Defiance has made its name by confronting what I agree with them, climate criminals, people who are making it even worse, the ecocide, the greenhouse gas fueled ecocide. And they've endorsed Kamala Harris for president. So I think that makes things worse. I think you have an opportunity here, Climate Defiance, to fight for a pro-environment president. And the president of the group, Climate Defiance, he recognizes, he really does. He gets it. Look, he says it's with heartbreak. He's not happy about it. And I give him credit. He explains how the decision was raised. I don't know whether Greenberg voted for Harris. I have no idea. I can't. He doesn't say. I have no reason. But he does explain how the decision was made. And I give him credit for that. So let's go to that first. Because, so often we never know why groups endorse candidates. The leadership decides something. We know that, for example, the American Federation of Teachers endorsed Hillary in 2016. And many, many teachers were very upset and said that we didn't vote for her. We didn't want her to be our nominee. We wanted Bernie. And we don't know All we know is Randy Weingarten said, oh, this was all transparent and it was the fair choice. But we don't know that. But here, and one thing we do know, and I give the Teamsters a lot of credit, because Sean O'Brien shared with us that, 60% of the rank and file voted for Trump. They still didn't endorse Trump. I get that. But at least we know what the rank and file wanted. So Michael Greenberg tells us, and I had to read the sentence several times to understand exactly what climate defiance meant. With over 300 votes cast from our community, remember, people who are active in these groups often are to the left or often are to the right of, the total involved, total activists. So people who vote, and I don't know, I assume, I'm going to assume maybe you had to be a donor to vote. If that's the case, if you had to be a donor to vote, this clearly represents, and I don't know that. He just says with over 300 votes cast from our community. Now, I don't know. I might have gotten a ballot. I don't remember. I don't know. I might have gotten a ballot. I don't want to say I didn't, but I don't contribute. So if it's only donors, I wouldn't have gotten a ballot. I actually did donate once, but that was a while ago, and I was to be joining as a member. I think to join as a member, you had to fill something else out, and I'm not sure I did that. So I'm going to assume that the people who are part of their community may be somewhat to the right of the activists. And what the sentence says is, with over 300 votes cast from our community, the results are clear. A strong majority of our base said we should endorse, and over 73% chose Harris. So I'm trying to understand, does that 73% reflect of the 300? So over like 215 votes, because that'd be 73%, 200 and something like that, 220 votes. Is that right? Or was it 200 or so members of the community said we should endorse, and of that majority, 73% said we should endorse Harris? And I presume the other 25% said endorse, or 27% said we should endorse Stein. I mean, maybe some also said Cornel West. I can't believe any of them would have said to endorse Trump. I can't believe anyone said to endorse Harris actually either. That just amazes me. But I'm not clear, it's not crystal clear from this, that a majority of the voters preferred Harris. Maybe they did. I'm not sure about that, but maybe they did. I'll assume they did. That would certainly seem to make sense based on those numbers. So, okay, your members chose Harris, and that's fine, and you get to endorse her, and I don't have a problem with that as far as your organization goes, as far as the management, leadership. But I have a problem with the endorsement. She's not good for the environment. She's bad for the environment. She supports fracking. The Harris-Biden administration has greenlit terrible projects like the Mountain Valley Pipeline. And I say it over and over again, but we can't ever forget. They are climate criminals at the very top. She should not have gotten that endorsement. The people who voted for her should not have voted for her. It's that if you care about the environment, you don't vote, period, for Kamala Harris to be president. Now, look, this is an email to share information, and I give Greenberg credit, and he's putting the best face on it. Maybe he voted against her, but he says we also must avert a second Trump catastrophe, and then take strong unified action to demand better from Dems in office. So first, let's address the question of a second Trump catastrophe. Yes, a Trump catastrophe, a Trump election would be a catastrophe, but so would a Harris re-election. Or election to president. I mean, it's re-election because she's vice V. But so would electing Harris. This is an administration that is in office now, and she's going to continue it. That has done terrible, terrible harm to our environment. It's not like they're the good and I want perfect. They're really bad. Nearly twice as much oil produced under Joe Biden than number 2, Saudi Arabia. Nearly twice. I mean, How could you be worse? Nothing is more important than keeping it in the ground. And I get you, like, people think, oh, well, I just care about having cheap gasoline. Well, your cheap gasoline is why our planet is on life support. And leaders are supposed to lead, not follow the worst impulses that people have, but to lead us to a better place. And that's the opposite of what Harris Biden have done. So if you're a progressive environmental group, I don't know how you endorse her. And I think by doing so, you're clearly, yes, that's making things worse. It truly is. This was an opportunity for Climate Defiance to lead us to a better candidate, to rally people in support of a really good person who has the right instincts. But they didn't. So I have a real, I can't sugarcoat that. I can't spin it as though it's okay. So back to this clip, by the way, quote here. By the way, yeah, click like, click subscribe if you haven't yet. Please, I need more subscriptions. I'm begging you. Please click like, please click subscribe. Let me see if I can get that video up one more time for you. So yeah, there's the little bottom right, Halitics, click like, click subscribe. So I already said we already read that. We must avert a Trump catastrophe. Yes, and we also must avert a Harris catastrophe. But we, according to Climate Defiance, can take strong and unified action to demand better from Democrats in office. Okay, this is like the exact same strategy that the Harris Biden team has employed with respect to Israel. We're going to keep giving Israel everything it wants. We're going to keep providing Netanyahu with all the weapons he demands to kill Palestinians, but we are going to demand better. So that's exactly the argument here. We're going to give Harris our vote. We're going to endorse her, but we're going to demand better. Well, where's the incentive for her to do better? She got your vote. That's all she really cares about. That's the only thing she cares about from you. Trust me. The only thing, she got your endorsement. So you just took away the one tool in the kit to demand better. And we know what the Democrats provide is awful. We know it's world destroying. So you got nothing. So there's more. I recognize this election presents a painful choice for many. We're forced to choose between throwing away our vote and supporting someone whose values don't align with our own fully. Okay, will you throw away your vote when you vote for somebody whose values don't align with your own? And that's what you did. The way that you don't throw away your vote is you support someone who actually has the same values as you do or are close. There's overlap. But there's no overlap with Harris whatsoever. And he addresses that. He doesn't claim there's overlap. He doesn't claim it. He says someone who's don't fully share our own values, don't fully align. But then he explains that supporting Harris, so even though she's not a good candidate, she doesn't share our values or doesn't fully align with our own, we're supporting her because we don't have any power. Well, you're not going to get any power. See, this is the thing. This is the chicken and the egg. As long as you support a person like Kamala Harris for president, you won't have any power. Because if she wins, you won't have any power. She's not going to listen to you. She's not going to won't have any access. You might have a little access. You won't have any, don't confuse access with impact, or don't confuse access with influence, right? So you might have some access. You're not going to have any influence, clearly. We don't have the power at this time to elect someone better. I fear that's true. I don't think we can elect Jill Stein, but we can support someone better. So, yeah, I mean, there it is. As long as progressive institutions view themselves as without the power to make change, there will be no change. As long as they don't view themselves as obligated morally to support candidates who are for the American people, who are progressive, who are pro-environment, who are pro-health, universal health coverage, who are pro-peace. As long as progressives don't get that, they'll have no power. The Democrat Party, as Jill Stein said, will concede nothing without demands and without consequences for failing to demand. So they did give one more explanation, which I thought was worth sharing, why many climate defiance members would not support Harris. And then we'll play a clip because, we'll see what they actually do. Because, the goal, the mission of climate defiance is to end our reliance on our use of, our consumption of fossil fuels because they're destroying our planet. That's their goal. That's why they're in this. And I totally share that goal. And they acknowledge the arguments against Harris are valid. Both her support for fracking and the decision to fund Israel's genocide. So yeah, it seems pretty clear to me. You don't support somebody. If you're a progressive group, you're determined to end fossil fuel consumption, you don't support somebody who's for fracking. And because these issues overlap, because we hopefully act morally in more than one arena, you also don't support somebody who backs genocide. Okay, so I do think, so finally, let me just say, Harris is not our savior. She's not a saint, but she is someone we can move, and move her we will. Well, I love the optimism, move her we will. But optimism without some basis is hollow, empty, flaccid. And there's no basis to believe that Harris can be moved. She never has been. She has taken some more progressive positions, and then the second it became clear that either they weren't going to help her get elected or they were going to hurt her with donors, she stopped it. She hasn't been moved no matter what. Israel kills Americans, doesn't change her opinion. We're going to back Israel to help. I'm unwavering in my support. Israel forcibly prevents humanitarian aid from reaching the people that it's bombing and starving. Israel forcibly prevents that. And Harris doesn't change her opinion. We're unwavering in our support for Israel. Rape claims in the wake of October 7 proved to be either baseless or very weak, whereas there's very powerful evidence that Israel is sexually assaulting, raping women and men. Doesn't change our opinion. We're unwavering in our support for Israel. So I don't know why anyone would think that she can be moved. Where's the evidence? I've asked this over and over. Where's the evidence that she can be moved? If you disagree, I want to hear from you. 240-242-5646. I'm going to go a little past one because we had a little bit of a problem earlier in the program, and I will cut that out of the replay. Once I get the editing done, I'll post it, so we'll have a better clip, better video for you. I wanted to play this also. There's another video here I want to play for you. And this is, let's see, what is it? So we did the one, so I wanted to share with you, because I did this for Amy Goodman for Democracy Now!, right, which was to show what they do. So here's what, and where she did something I thought was really important. She reported on Anthony Blinken's complete dismissal and, in fact, denial, and Joe Biden's denial of reports from their own administration, within the administration, that Israel was preventing critical aid from getting to Gazans and was in fact weaponizing hunger, starvation, really. So that's something really important that democracy now does. I say, well, they're weak, but are they useless? Well, they're not useless there. They're not worthless there, but their interview of Jill Stein wasn't real helpful. Here's what Climate Defiance does.
Pleasure. I'm a Canadian, actually.
All right, so there's two Canadians, Michael Rosenberg from Climate Defiance and Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister. And he's being confronted.
Good to see you. Oh, great. What's your name? My name's Michael Greenberg. Pleasure to see you, Michael. UFOs out
Go close on that, okay?
You are a climate criminal. You are a climate criminal. Moved on from that stuff in Canada. You are a climate criminal. You are a climate criminal, sir.
All right, so he keeps repeating it, and I agree. You know, he's terrible. Trudeau is terrible. Canada's a petrostate. But tragically, it's not going to matter. Justin Trudeau doesn't care what Michael Greenberg says. Maybe he's a little irritated by it. The only way you get to these people is you vote them out of office, or you make them so terrified that they're going to get voted out of office if they don't change their minds, or they don't change their opinion, they don't change their actions, that they change their policies. That's the only way. Endorsing Kamala Harris ain't going to feed the bulldog. Now, you could say, well, hell, you could endorse Jill Stein. I ain't going to feed the bulldog either. She's going to lose. Right. But you've set a marker. You said, hey, we're going to keep, you're building a movement. It's true. It's not going to happen overnight. But what's the alternative? The end of the world. That's the alternative. All right, one more quick story here, and then I will call it a program. Probably will end a little bit early today. Well, it won't be early, but it won't maybe be a full hour program. I'm not sure. So one of the Biden-Harris administration's solutions to the climate crisis are these carbon markets, right? You've heard a lot about this, where people, where companies can generate through, I guess, green projects, what they call carbon credits that have value. That is the right to pollute. And you sell that credit to another company, and then the company pollutes, but the company had to pay to pollute, so there's a disincentive because they had to buy the credit. And you, as the green project, get a benefit for being green. So that's the theory, right? It incentivizes being green, and it disincentivizes being a polluter. But Politico does a really nice job here, and it's interesting because this is Politico's energy newsletter. So they should be, I think, pretty pro-energy, but they're pro-energy, pro-for-profit fossil fuel company. But they're not. They do a really good job exposing this scam. Biden administration helps use voluntary carbon markets to help, I guess, why did they say to help supply international climate aid? Yeah, I guess, if you build these solar panels, then you get credit. You get tax credits that you can, or offsets that you can sell, and then the companies that are polluting have to pay for those offsets. So it incentivizes those projects, which are good projects. But as Scribell points out in Politico, this tool actually might make things worse. And she explains very clearly why. But before she does, I thought this was such a powerful paragraph here. A lot of economists and environmentalists are saying, you know what? These credits don't really work. These carbon offsets don't really work. They're not making things better. But guess what? Carbon market leaders, buyers, sellers, Wall Street, they want to convince you, oh, no, these are great. These are really good. This is a really good tool. In other words, business as usual. Our profits will not be impacted. That's why they're promoting it, because they recognize that the so-called secondary market for offsets isn't going to cost them much money, isn't going to make it harder for them to make huge profits by destroying our planet. That this is much better than what I call for, which is, of course, a fossil fuels tax, which is the solution. You need to make polluting costly. Every single barrel of oil that you burn, every single ton of coal that you consume, you pay for it. You pay through the nose, and you keep on paying. And it doesn't matter who you are, because whether you're a poor worker just barely getting by, or you're a billionaire flying in a private jet, regardless of who you are, when you burn gasoline, you are burning up our mother, our planet. The end of story. There's no more to it. Now, if you're poor and you need to burn that gasoline to survive, we have an obligation to make sure you have enough to survive, period, end of story. More than to survive. We have an obligation, if you're just barely getting by and you need gasoline to get by, we have to make sure you are better off as we transition away from gasoline than you are now. And the way we do that, we take from the rich. But job one, beyond guaranteeing all have enough and none have too much, job one is to end our use, our consumption, not just our dependence, our consumption of this planet-destroying substance. So Scribell does a real nice job explaining how those fossil fuel offset markets work, voluntary emissions markets. Climate-friendly projects. So I don't know how they determine what's climate friendly or not. See, that to me is a big problem here. We don't know. Why is it climate friendly? What is climate friendly? What isn't? Whatever the government decides is climate friendly generates credits that polluting companies or individuals voluntarily buy to cancel out their own carbon emissions and meet their climate goals. So again, it goes to what I just said. If you are a polluter, you have to pay for the right to pollute, and that makes it more costly, which is similar to what I say we should impose a tax. But the tax can be set by the government, and the tax can be set to rise and rise and rise, which it should do. But when it's a carbon market, prices go up, prices go down. Markets can be gamed, and we don't know who's actually in the markets necessarily. Are they really climate-friendly projects, for example? Those are really relevant questions that Scribell points out don't have neat and tidy answers. And she gives some good examples, or I was glad to see these examples because I really didn't know. And I was wondering, what does the government consider a climate-friendly project? So here's your answer. Planting mangroves, which sounds like a good idea, right? Those mangroves prevent more erosion of little low-lying islands and low-lying islands, at sea level islands, and building solar farms, protecting storm-battered which protects storm-battered countries, I suppose. The U.S. So building solar farms, replace coal-fired power, and protecting storm-battered countries globally. I think those sound like worthy projects, but you've got to have all this bureaucracy to look at a project and determine if it's really valuable, if it's really going to make a difference. And Scribell points out several things about what so far has caused this whole idea of carbon offset markets to not make things better. And this is what the Biden-Harris, this is your clean green Democratic alternative. This is why, again, you got to vote for Jill Stein. The pay-to-pollute model only works if the new projects meaningfully reduce greenhouse gases and would not have been built otherwise. Right. Exactly. Because if you just have a bunch of boondoggles that are taking advantage of tax credits but don't really do anything, you're not making a difference. And according to the article, it's not just that they don't make a difference, they may make things worse. So how do they, first of all, not make a difference? Well, numerous studies have found that these carbon markets are littered with projects, I guess like planting mangroves, that do little to address climate change. They don't address climate. The mangroves are good because they prevent erosion, but they don't prevent the temperature from getting hotter and hotter. And at some point, the mangroves can't stop that. They can't stop the disappearance of islands into the sea. So the projects aren't really necessarily useful. And even there, it's not just that they're not even useful. They may actively be harmful. Why is that? Because if a polluter can buy these pollution credits and they're relatively inexpensive, they'll just keep doing it. They won't actually stop polluting. They won't stop burning fossil fuels. In a sense, and this guy Cullenward from UPenn says, these carbon offsets can be used as and are being used as a permission to pollute. It sets a price on polluting. That's often way too low. So again, that's why we shouldn't have any of that. Just impose the tax. You don't need a bureaucracy. You don't need new markets that have to be monitored and that have to be policed for corruption and for price fixing. You don't have to do any of that with a tax. You just stick the tax on at the pump. You stick the tax on at the power plant. You stick the tax on wherever the dirty, filthy stuff is being consumed. And you solve the problem. And it's all over. All right, I could do more. I've got more I could talk about, but it's well past 1. I will edit the video, as I mentioned. I hope you have a great day. Tomorrow is the, what do we call it again? The free-for-all. And no Monday Arlen. Or, yeah, Arlen Monday. No Arlen Monday. Maybe we'll have him Tuesday. See you tomorrow.